As you requested today a video just focusing on to kick drums for electronic dance music. Hey guys, welcome to my studio. I'm just back from my little lunch break. Of course, just healthy stuff. Now I finished all of the business things and all of the preparations for the remix contest that is starting tomorrow. So it's about time to focus on to making music, starting a new track from scratch. Actually, probably just the drums of the track, because I have a recording session at the beginning of next week. I want to have a couple of drum loops ready so that we can right away start developing the melodies and already have kind of a click to play to. Whenever I start a new project, I just open up my template. It already has a couple of plugins preloaded into it, a lot of reverbs and delays on the buses, and it also has Geist, my drum sequencer, already in it. So this right here is Geist. I always select pad number 1 and then I search for a kick sample. I go most of the time into my own sample folder where I have a lot of kicks already pre-selected or bounced out of older projects. And for this track I will use here kick number 7. And then you just draw in whatever you wanted to play. We will just go here for a standard house beat 4 to the floor. And this is already the key factor in getting a good kick for your EDM tracks. It's all about selecting the right sample. The sample already makes up 95% of the sound. If you have the wrong sample, you can EQ it, you can compress it as much as you want to. It will never sound good. It's way easier to just go for another kick than trying to improve the one that you already have. That's also the main reason why I have my own folder with kicks. These are the kicks that I've selected over years, where I've learned to work with them. Kicks that I've used in past releases, I bounce them out, put them into that folder. This makes it a whole lot easier to start with new tracks. I know immediately that these kicks are good and working. Otherwise I would now have to go through gigabytes of samples and try to find one and then build an entire track on top of the kick, and maybe even have to change the kick afterwards, which is really annoying. It basically ruins all of your mixing. But this of course leaves us with the big question how actually to know if a kick is good for a track. A lot of beginners usually just go through their samples and select one where they think it sounds good, but a kick doesn't have to sound good on its own. It has to sound good within the mix. And it's hard to select a kick if you don't already have the mix. But if you choose the wrong kick, it's hard to get the mix right. So it's really a matter of experience. But if you just start out, don't go for the kicks that have a massive amount of sub bass. This will probably just end up taking away all of the space in your mix. It will be harder to get the balance with the bass right. And this will actually take time to really learn. You can of course just go and sample someone else's kick. That's totally fine. A lot of producers do that. You need of course a studio with speakers and good room acoustic that you can actually hear how the kick is really sounding. But yeah, let me just play you some examples that you really know what I'm talking about. You know what, let me just open up here the span analyzer so that you can actually see what's going on. So this right here is now the kick that I choose, that I really like. It's playing here right around 44-45 Hertz, and that's actually a good range to have a kick in. For example, if I now choose another kick, it has its peak here at, 70 Hertz. This is way too high for me and way too high for most EDM tracks. You really need something that is between 40 and 55, maybe 60. Or for example, this kick sounds really strange. I wouldn't use it for electronic music. This is more something that you can use for live music, but I personally really don't like the sound at all. And this one right here has, for example, a nice top end that you could use to layer it, but the sub part is not enough for dance music. So let's go back to my sample folder. If you go here through all of my kicks, you can see that I'm really aiming for this sub part being right between 40 and 60 Hertz. Also, this one right here is right around 46. This one is a little bit higher, it's at 55. This one is right at 50 Hertz. And this range between 40 and 60 is really kind of the standard for EDM music. You will find it in techno, in house, in big room EDM kind of tracks, also in deep house and all other styles. For drum and bass and dubstep, you can also get away with using a way higher kick and then have the sub bass underneath it, where actually the kick would usually be. It's done in a bit different way, but for those 4 to the floor kind of styles of music, you kind of want your kick to be in that range. What a lot of producers forget, that the kick is still an instrument. It has a key, it has a tone, and you have to keep that in mind. So if your track is playing in A minor, you have to tune your kick to the key of the track. If the key of the track is not between 40, or the root note of the key of the track is between 40 and 60 Hertz, I would rather go for another note that is also in the key of the track than the root note, because if you go too much up or down, the kick will just sound strange and not really have the punch that you need for the club. So let's select again this kick number 7 that I had at the beginning. In every plugin that you will use for your drums, you will have somewhere a possibility to change the pitch of the kick. You can pitch it down and you can immediately see that the peak of the kick dropped now to 32 Hertz, which is C1. Maybe I have to zoom in. Yeah, now you can see it. 32 Hertz, that's a C. And with the normal pitch, it's right around 43 Hertz, that's an F. So for example, if your track is in A minor or major and you want to pitch it to A, you will have to go up. But if it's sounding too high and just weird and you need that space for the sub bass, you can also go with any other note that fits to A minor. So for example, 50 Hertz G would be all fine. Just don't go for the notes that are on the black keys. This tuning of a kick is important, but it's even way more important on percussions. I hear a lot of tracks where the percussions are just not right. It's just not played right. It's usually some producers that don't have a clue about music, just dragging into their DAW a lot of loops that have a lot of percussions in them, and it just sounds wrong. So with all of your drum elements, except for the hi-hats and this kind of stuff that doesn't have a tone to it, you have to check for the key and get it into the right notes for the track. But there's of course a lot more stuff you can do than just pitching your kick up and down. You can change the length of the kick. You can, if it's a sample, just shorten it. It makes sense to shorten it when your track gets really fast. The faster your track is, the closer the kicks are to each other, and to still have room for other elements, make them maybe a tiny bit shorter. If you make like dubstep at 95 BPMs, then you will need to have a kick that is longer and has more bass to kind of cover the space in between of them. So usually the next thing I would do is go back into the pattern mode and just add on top of the kick another kick or a head, just something to create a top end and kind of layer a kick into one that I can use in the mix. This way I just have way more control over the kick. I can change the volume on either one of them. And for example, if the track is finished and I have the feeling that the kick doesn't really cut through, although the bass part of the kick is sitting nice in the mix, I can just raise the volume on the top kick. For the top part of the kick, I like to use kick samples that sound like live recorded drums to kind of get a mixture between an electronic kick and a live sounding one. And I think I will just go for this one. Change the pitch back again to be lower on the sub kick part. and lower the volume on the top kick, and then go into the individual channels again where I have full control over the EQing. For example, here on the sub kick I can take away the top end, and on the top kick I can remove the lower part of it. Whenever you layer kicks, you have to be careful with the phasing. It can cause issues, and then you just have to try out inverting the phase on one of the two drum elements. For example, in this case it sounds better to switch the phase on the top kick drum. These phasing issues are also the main reason why I don't use 3 samples to create a kick having like a low, mid and high part. That's already too much, it gets too complicated, and in most cases this will sound even worse. Splitting the kick up into a low part and a high part is really just for me to have more control. You could also just use twice the same kick and split it up into a low and high part so that you can just individually control the volume. And actually at this point of time it doesn't make sense to do anything else with the kick. I just split it up into those 2 bands, and then I start building up the rest of the drums, add piano sounds, chords, have a main melody. And when all of this is done, then I go back to the kick and maybe even try out another sample if it's necessary, or I start EQing it. But those EQ changes are really fine and subtle. Same with the compression. As I said at the beginning of this video, it's 95% just the right sample that you have to choose. I've made actually 3 of these tracks where I just make the drum elements to have them as a basis for the melodic things next week. Now let's open up an older finished track of mine where I can show you the more advanced stuff that you do at later stages to your kick drum while mixing the track. This right here is my Dawning track. That's actually the one you will be able to remix. You just have to wait 1 more day. And here on the kick drum I have a low cut. It's cutting away below 30 Hz. There was just some unneeded very low frequency that you can't actually hear, but it's taking away space, and the high cut to leave room for the top kick. I got rid of the low frequencies on the top kick, added a little bit of boost around 1000 Hz, and added a tiny bit of air here at the very top end. I sometimes have a direction mixer on top of the kick drum just to be able to narrow it down if it might have too much information that is stereo, or just turn it down all the way to just have it mono for the sub part. And then actually all of my drums are routed into one bus. On top of the bus is a glue compressor with parallel compression. This is basically applying a heavy amount of compression and then just mixing in this case, for example, just 4% of this heavily compressed sound. And that's basically already it for the processing of the kick drum. At least on this track I sometimes apply a bit more of EQing, or I use now, since I have it, the Neutron plugin from Isotope to get a bit more out of the kick drum. But if you get the right sample, there's not really much left for you to do. Finding the right samples depends on the style of music you're making. There are a ton of sample packs available. You can buy them, some of them are even for free, and they usually have a specific genre they're made for, so just go with one of those packs. And then it's really about using the kicks. If you're a beginner, stick to one kick and really learn to work with it. You can also sample kicks from other producers. I might even do a video on how to actually sample from other tracks. There are some techniques to even get kicks that are masked by other elements. And I can't recommend it enough. Start your own sample folder. Start right away with it if you don't have one. This will not only save you a ton of time, this will also help you to develop your own style and kind of sound of music if you restrict yourself to a certain amount of samples that you've selected, edited and processed over years. That's also one of the reasons why I don't have to EQ that much. The kicks that I'm using, they are already EQ'd. I already EQ'd them probably on the last project. So that's actually already it for today. If you have any questions left concerning kick drums or any other production topic, just let me know. Making a good kick drum sound is really all about just finding a good kick drum sound. And I can't wait for the announcement of the remix contest. It's all coming tomorrow. Tomorrow you will be able to download the stems and start doing the remix of the Dawning track. So next up, probably grocery shopping with Vanessa.
Yeah.
That's something nobody's really interested in.
Yeah.
Or you want to say anything about kick drums? So that's it.